Good morning, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So as usual, lots of great stuff to talk about. I was just watching some news this morning before I got on the air, and they were talking about how someone is predicting that the housing market's going to go down 20% and all of that kind of good stuff. And basically, I'm not in agreement. They were looking at nationwide in regards to what they were talking about, and it is very local. And people are making predictions, so they get on the news and all of that kind of good stuff. But there's no empirical evidence or anything to the contrary that that's going to happen. And they were talking about Gen Z people and how they're moving back with their families, which we've been talking about that for a long time, that all of those kinds of things are going on. And so what's happening in the market is, in our market, is that at the moment, everything is very stable. And when interest rates start to go down, which is another prediction that I ran into for 2026 that I'm going to be talking about later in the show, that basically that will make houses more affordable immediately for people. And there are things in the work to making them more affordable, but we still have houses selling today. Our market is what we consider a normal market. And so we're not in the single family homes realm it is. In the condos, they are in a buyer's market. So I would expect some price improvement, but not in the single family homes. And it has been this way really for about 3 or 4 years, where we've been that way. Now in the fringes areas and that kind of stuff of towns, there are definitely some price reductions that are going on. Because, one of the other things that I'm going to be talking about today is what people are looking for, and that is location. And so when they move too far out and the traffic's too bad, they decide that's not really for them. But I'm going to get into the stats and look at what's going on and everything. For the single family homes, there were only 296 that sold last week, but you have to remember there was Thanksgiving and the title company we use, and most of them were not open on Thursday or Friday. And, most of the lending, the banks had to be open, but they were on a limited scale in regards to what was open. Like the people that were doing loans were not open, and that section wasn't open. And so as a result of it, there were only 3 days versus 5 days last week. And the week before it was 431. So we were down 130. But we were basically at 300. So it was a pretty good week. It was at the end of the month and everything as well. So I think that was good. The median price was at $421.50, which basically that's up a little bit from the week before. It's within our margin of where it kind of has been varying over the last several years. And so we're very consistent when it comes to that. Basically, when we're looking at how that shakes down, of the 296 properties, 250 under 250, there were 31 of them. 250 to 300, 22, 300 to 400, 79, 58 between 400 to 500, 500 to a million, there were 87, and 19 over a million that sold. So the inventory actually went down by 183, which in my opinion is good news. Now that might have been because of the end of the month and some of the properties expired, and so maybe they're coming back on the market this week, so we'll have to wait and see. But basically overall, with the lower number of only 3 days of inventory, so you got to remember that the number that I'm going to give you here in the months of inventory is going to be a little bit overstated, because we're only looking at 3 days of activity instead of the 5 that we usually do. But this is showing that we have got 6.72 months of inventory. So 4 to 6 is considered a normal balanced market. So it's a little bit over that, but the main reason for that is because of the 3-day week. Now, when you're looking under 250, it's at 4.6. Up to 300, it's 5.55, 250 to 300. Then we're in the fives all the way up to 500. Then it goes to 6.96, and the highest one is over a million, is basically at 10.79 months of inventory. So if anything, the over $1 million properties are the ones that might fall. And that is because there's a glut in inventory in regards to what happened last week. So I think that, in the last couple weeks, I've noticed that they're a little bit higher. And so, there might be some room there when things are happening and all of that kind of good stuff. The list to ask price ratio overall was at 96.35. The interesting thing, between 250 all the way up to a million was over 97.5 in all categories, one of them even at 98. So they're pretty consistent there, but under 250 was at 90.34, over a million was at 93.57. So holds the standard every week. What kind of happens there, that the under 250 and over a million are where people can negotiate. The under 250, usually because they do need some work. And so there's usually a lot of play there. And then over a million, there has always been a lot of play there that in regards to what's going on. The lower end and the higher end kind of always dictate and bring that average down a little bit. So when we're looking at the condos, townhomes, and villas, there were 73 that were sold last week versus 94 the week before. And like I said, 296 single-family homes. So the condo market is quite a bit smaller, about a quarter in regards to what it is of the single-family homes. The price is at $270 versus $420, basically for the median price of a condo, townhome, and villa. And the inventory there went down 76, but it still doesn't help them too much. The condo inventory is really in a place where it's definitely a buyer's market, and we are seeing some changes on that. So when we're in that balanced market kind of thing, prices are kind of holding pretty steady. When you're in where there's excess inventory, then obviously you are going to have some prices falling and that kind of stuff potentially. When we're shaking it all down, of those 73 houses, 32 of them were under 250, 14 between 250 and 300, 19 between 3 and 4, 6 between 4 and 5, 2 between 500 and a million, and none sold over a million. So the inventory there is going to show really crazy numbers this week. Under 250, we're looking at 12 months of inventory, 11.23 between 250 and 300, 13.15 between 3 and 4, 19.6 months of inventory between 4 and 5, and 34 months of inventory between 500 and a million. So you can see, and then obviously we can't even calculate it over a million because none of them sold. And one sold last week, and so it showed there was 22 months of inventory or something like that. But, you have to take that over a month. So we have to look at those figures and that kind of thing as well. But basically, the bottom line is that there is about a year of inventory when you're looking at a condo. So when you are going to sell that condo, you need to know that you're competing with a lot of other properties that are out there. There's a 12-month supply. And I was meeting with one condo owner this week, and I was letting them know, I said, basically the bottom line is that, your property might be the best one out there, and this particular property it's really a gem. I'm going to talk a little bit about it a little later. But basically, if we can't get anybody in there because they're looking at what's going on around it, because you price the property too high, your property is just going to sit on the market, and you definitely don't want to do that. Now, so basically, when you're in that situation, if you're in in a condo or townhome or villa, you definitely have to be completely cognizant in regards to what's going on in the market. And in the single family home, you do as well. And so it really comes down to be strategic, to really looking at it, to figure out what's the best thing to do in order to make everybody happy and make everything happen. And that's what I think is absolutely critical when it comes to selling a house in our market today. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can just call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So basically, there is some good news, in my opinion, going on right now. The interest rates did go down slightly this week to 6.19. So when they start getting in the fives and they get to 5, then that's where they think that everything is going to open up. So they were up as high as 7. So the fact that they're in the lower 6s right now and getting down to 6 and hopefully below pretty soon, that's going to make a big difference in affordability. And that's all you hear everywhere on the news, like I was saying earlier today, is affordability, affordability, affordability. And basically, when it comes to housing, what it comes down to is that the government does regulate the amount of money that you can pay for a house. Now, you have as much as that you feel comfortable with it and everything as well, but they're going to look at your debt to equity ratio and how much credit card debt you've got, student loans, all those kinds of things are all going to enter into it in your overall maximum credit that you can have. And then the housing is limited to a certain percentage and that kind of thing too. And it depends on the kind of loan that you're going to get. But a good rule of thumb is that they don't want you to have more than 50% of your income to be eaten up with debt payments. So that would be student loans, that would be credit cards, that would be housing, that would be everything all together. And so that's where the affordability becomes key. So if the interest rates get too high, then obviously what happens is that you can borrow less money to get that same payment. And so as the interest rates go down, then that means that you can, a house that costs maybe $400,000, maybe it's $500 a month cheaper because the interest rate is lower, provided that you're getting a loan. Now, if you're paying cash for it, it's a completely different animal, obviously, because that's money out of your pocket. But basically, most people out there do get loans. Well, most do. It's probably about 20% or so of the houses are being paid for by cash. So a lot of times cash buyers will come in there and they'll be like, oh, I'm paying cash, and so I should get a lot cheaper rate. And sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, because if it's going to be cash to the seller if it's a loan, or it's cash to the seller if you're purchasing it with cash. And so it might be a little bit less hassle for them if it's cash, but basically the bottom line is that it's going to be the same across the board in regards to what's going to end up in their pocket. So they may take that and they may not take a lower rate. But basically, when the rates go down, then that makes the properties more affordable. And that's where I was talking about a week or two ago in regards to the 50-year mortgage, that if you spread out the payments, then again, that's going to be another thing that's going to lower the payments and make it so that the houses are more affordable. And so you've got to remember too that if the prices do go down significantly, which we all hope they do not, because what happens then is that the people that own those houses, that they're going to take a loss on that. They might not be able to move anywhere else, so they might just decide that they're going to stay where they're at because they're not going to be able to take that equity and move to the next place. And we did, when I first got my license, I got my license in 2005. and the market was going up like crazy at that point in time, and it was going up about 5% a month. So in Central Florida, so it was really kind of crazy. And I remember the seasoned agents; they're like, "Oh, the prices have never gone down here, and they're not going to go down, and this is great. The market's going up, and all of that kind of stuff." And I was there; I was sitting there thinking, "What goes up must come down." The way that it definitely had been going up. And so basically what happened, in my opinion, because I was a new agent, so I didn't, have all my ducks in a row and everything happening at that point in time. And so I noticed in the fall of 2005 that everything kind of stalled. The kids went back to school, and usually that, and what I've come to realize now is that when the kids go back to school, you have about 30 days where people kind of slow down in their home purchases and that kind of stuff. And then right after that, they just get right back on there because everybody's into their routine. They know what's going on. And so the houses start selling again. And they just go down a little bit, maybe like 20% or something for that month. That is what happens. And so, but they didn't come back. And the reason, in my opinion, is that people said, hey, this is enough. I put up with that it had these price increases, and I think we were way undervalued in the Central Florida market. And so they went, they went up significantly, probably too much because the pendulum always goes too far. And so then they came down and they kept going down, and they went down all the way to April of 2010 is what I consider the bottom. I mean, 2010 is definitely where the bottom was. So that was 2005 to 2010 where the properties had continued to go down. And there were a lot of short sales. There were a lot of foreclosures. There were a lot of people that lost a lot of things during that time frame. And you probably know somebody, or maybe you were somebody that went through that. And so the banking regulations changed at that time. Before that, there were, loans that you got in for interest only, and then they changed the payment like a year in. And so it was just kind of, crazy. So people's payments went up significantly and they couldn't afford them. And so it was just kind of a mess. It really was a mess. And we worked our way through it. But guess what? It took 5 years to get to that bottom, to where prices started going up. And they went down too low. I mean, absolutely, they went down too low. A lot of investors got in there and got some really good deals. And now their wealth has definitely climbed significantly more than it would have at any other time. So they were smart in getting in there, the people that did have the cash to do that. But basically, we just were incrementally going up, kind of like with the cost of living is basically what had happened, since that point. I mean, there were a few jumps there, which needed to be to kind of get us back to normal and everything. And so we're kind of at where we were at that 2005. But that's 20 years that it's taken us to get there, which would be a normal time, to get there, to be at that point. So we have not gone beyond that. We've kind of stayed where that is. And once the interest rates went up is when everything kind of froze. But it didn't tumble. It just stayed consistent. And so the amount of houses that are selling was about double back then when the interest rates were a lot lower. And so we have a lot more inventory now, but we're at a balanced market is basically where we're at. So if the inventory continues to climb, which it has really stopped climbing, then we could have a problem. But right now we're okay. And if the affordability becomes better, then that's going to open up the floodgates. So, and honestly, that's what I think is going to happen. I have other people that tell me differently, but they don't have a pulse on the market in regards to what's going on. They're not out there day in and day out, hearing what's going on with the people. I mean, we still have a positive incoming into the state of Florida on a daily basis, still around 1,000 people. They expect that to go down a little bit to the low. They expect to be a positive of people coming into the state of 700 a day. So that's not just our area, that's the whole state. But that's a lot of people that are coming into the area and that are looking, to purchase and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's why when you look around and you see all of the construction in the huge apartments and all that kind of stuff that are being built, there is a place and people that want to take those properties. And so that's kind of, what the scoop is. But I think I started with the interest rate actually being at 6.19. And so that's down, but I'd like it to be in the fives. And then I think that that's going to open it up. So if the interest rates go to 5 and you bought now, you're going to be happy that you did. You can refinance and all of that kind of good stuff to take advantage of a lower rate if that's what you want to do. But if you can qualify and get in there now, I think that that's a really good thing that you could do. The other thing that's going on right now is that we're kind of into the holiday season, obviously. And so our lowest time of the year, usually when properties are selling, is in the month of December, because everybody has so much stuff going on that they're involved in all of that kind of stuff. And so the housing kind of goes to the back burner. January is one of our lowest months of the year for closings. And then February, it just kind of pops right back up there, which I do expect it to do. So if you are in the market, I would say now is the time to actually go ahead. You've got a lot of choices. Some people really want to sell and they'll probably give you a deal. And so I would definitely suggest that this is the time that you would want to do that. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and I'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I wanted to, I was talking a little bit about, what people are looking for and the market and all of that kind of good stuff. And there was a study that was done out there that was talking about, what people are looking for and what they would, what they're going to be buying or what they are buying and all of that kind of good stuff. And the number one thing that is still really, really, really important to people is location. You've probably heard that your whole life. It's location, location, location. And the thing is that what people say is that, you can change the inside of a house. You can do all of those kinds of things, but you cannot change the location when you find it. And I think that what we've seen, in some studies, recent studies like 6 months ago and stuff, there were they were saying that one of the areas in the state that had the biggest drop in value was Winter Haven. And, it's like when you think of Orlando, Winter Haven is about an hour away from the south side, or 45 minutes or whatever from the south side at least. And so you wouldn't think of Winter Haven as a suburb of Orlando. But it was considered a suburb of Orlando when people were desperate for buying houses, wanted to find a place, all of that kind of stuff. They would go all the way to Winter Haven to buy their house. And then they thought, oh my gosh, this is just too far. So I want to move in closer. So if you're in Winter Haven and your family's in Winter Park, you're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of an hour and a half to a 2-hour drive, to get back and forth. And if you're working in downtown Orlando, it's probably a good hour and a half during rush hour and all of that kind of good stuff, if not longer. And so as a result of that, that was just a little bit too far. And so that to me showed another thing of location, location, location. And basically, that's what this article was saying, is that people want to be in a specific neighborhood, or their dream is to actually be in a good location. And so they will give up other things in order to be in that location. And that's why I think that properties that are in good neighborhoods and all of that kind of thing do hold their value very well. And so it's really important that you do that. an interesting thing that they found, which is not surprising to me, is that 82% of the people that are looking for a house want 3 or more bedrooms. And that is not surprising at all. One of the hardest properties to sell is a 2 bedroom house because everybody thinks, okay, I've got, even if it's 1 or 2 people, they're like, okay, well, I've got the bedroom for us and then we've got a spare. And, but then they go, well, I'd like a craft room if they're a little older maybe, or I'd like a reading nook, or I'd like an office, or an exercise room. So there's always a purpose for that 3rd bedroom, even if it's not considered a bedroom. And so a 2 bedroom house is, like I said, one of the hardest things to sell. So I think that that's just something that you need to be cognizant of. 61% of the people would prefer 2 baths or more. Again, not a big surprise to me. One of the most sought after things that people search for is a 3-2 at least, or a 3+, 2+, and that kind of stuff. So basically that's something that people are looking for. They would prefer a big lot, which again is going to be probably more like an older property. The newer homes that are being built today, most of them are built on 9,000 square feet or less, which comes down to about a fifth of an acre. And so, properties are close to one another, probably 10 feet in between houses is what a lot of properties are. And, sometimes they feel like they're smaller. And it's like, if you just go there and you put your arms out, it's like, can I touch the next house and everything if I do that? And many times you almost can when you're looking at that. And so, 70% is on the location, though. That's still one of the most important things that people want to do. And so basically and another study that they looked at is that they said on average to remodel a property that the cost is about 52,000. And so if you kept that in mind, then that would be something that you would look at. Only 20% of the people want to have a homeowners association. Now, this is a nationwide study, and I kind of laughed about that because there are not that many houses that exist here. I would say probably 20% do not have a homeowners association in our area because so much of it was built from the 80s on. A lot of the 80s properties are basically their homeowners associations are maybe optional, but anything from the 90s on, which most of the properties here in Central Florida seems like are 90s on, are all in a homeowners association. So that is very difficult to find in Central Florida in the area that you want, unless you want a much older home or a much more established area. Obviously Winter Park, downtown Orlando, College Park. Some of those areas are definitely going to have those homes that match that, but they're not the modern homes that you might be looking for. The other thing that I found interesting is it said that most people are looking for a single story home. And so regardless of age. So I thought that was interesting as well. And so and another thing that was really, really important to people were the property taxes and insurance. And one note on the property taxes that is one of my kind of pet peeves when people are looking at properties, they're looking at the property taxes. Now, not that you shouldn't look at the property taxes, but the challenge with the property taxes is that they are reset when you purchase the home. So if you're going to buy in a certain area, like say you're going to buy in unincorporated Orange County, the millage rate for that property is going to be the same all throughout unincorporated Orange County. So depending on the house that you buy, if you buy it for the same amount in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood, your taxes are going to be the same, unless there's a CDD that's included in the taxes, which is really part of the HOA in my opinion, but it's part of the taxes. And so it inflates it that way, and it increases the taxes. So you have to be really careful when you're out there looking and look at what you're going to pay. There is the portability if you've had a house before. to port your property taxes to another home and that kind of thing, but you need to check with the county to find out exactly what that's going to be. Those calculations are way beyond my pay grade. So the best thing that I do is I say, hey, go ahead and call the county, and they will tell you exactly what you can port, what that means for you, how it all works, all of that kind of stuff, because they know. And everything is a little different, and those calculations, like I said, are quite complicated. So your best thing to do, because it's based on how many years you've lived there, and the list goes on and on and on in regards to how all that works. So your best bet is to actually go to the actual source, which is the county, and say, hey, I want to buy this house. This is where I live now. I want to port my property taxes. What's that going to look like? And they can absolutely let you know. And that's your best thing to do. So my point is, if you're looking at property taxes, you can go to the county sites, which I do all the time, and I can put in for somebody new to the area and say that they're going to buy the house. Are they going to be homesteaded? All of that kind of stuff. And it'll give you a range within about $500 of what the taxes are going to be on that property when you purchase it. And that's the best thing to do about taxes. Don't look at what's in the MLS. Don't look at what's on Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, Redfin, any of those property searches where people look. Don't look at those places and the taxes and say, okay, this is what my taxes are going to be. That is not correct. So you need to make sure that you do your homework on that or work with somebody that's going to help you do that. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So one of the things that I wanted to, I was talking the last segment in regards to location is the number one thing that people are looking for. And one of the lines that I came across that I think is absolutely correct is that a dream home is one that accommodates your life. And so when people are looking for that dream home, they may or not find it on their first purchase that they buy. It's probably unrealistic to think that the first property that you buy in your life is going to be your dream home. You actually, might have to stair step yourself up there, and that's how a lot of people do it. I know that, when you're looking at building wealth and all of that kind of good stuff, the best way to do it, in my opinion, is real estate, because what you can do is you can have actually someone else help build your equity by having a tenant or whatever, tenants that would actually pay for your property and build your wealth at the same time. So you're going to obviously get the appreciation and all of that kind of thing as time goes on. But the other thing that you're going to get is that you're going to get the equity of the loan that's being paid back. So it's somebody else's money that's paying off a loan that you owe. So how great is that, right? And, some people say, well, there's a lot of headaches with that. Well, there can be, but there can also be situations that are not that many headaches that you have to deal with. You'd be surprised in regards to how you can eliminate them, and by having a great property manager. And we can refer you to some of those to make sure that you've got the right person that works for you, and they're not charging you more than you can afford, meaning that it's still growing your wealth and not eating all your profits and all of that kind of good thing. But you definitely need to look at the situation to find out what's the best deal for you and your family and what's going on and all of those kinds of things. And so, you can actually come very close to finding what you're looking for and making that first step. And, there are a lot of options and everything out there with the multi-generation homes and everything like that are going on that, like, for example, in a few places around town, they have garage apartments that actually are very nice, 1 and 2 bedrooms and that kind of thing. They have, there is the in-law suite that is available, is what they call it on a lot of them. But, that ADU, which is that alternative dwelling unit that actually exists on the home, and every county has different regulations in regards to what that can be. So if you are on a fairly big property, you could possibly add another home on there that would be for your relatives in the backyard. I know I was last year when I was selling a house in Winter Park, there was some people that were looking at doing that on the property that was for sale, and there was plenty of room on it. We ended up selling it to somebody else before they pulled the trigger on it, but they were definitely looking into it. And in most counties, it comes down to that the main house has to be at least a third bigger than the alternative property that's there. So if it's a 3,000 square foot house, then you would have to be under 2,000 square feet for the other property, is what it comes down to. So, but every county is different, so you have to look at it. Some of them might be a little bit less. It'd have to be half the size, so maybe it can only be 1,500 square feet if you had a 3,000 square foot main house. But basically, there are those alternatives, and there are things and ways to get creative in order to make properties work for multi-generations and that kind of thing that's going on. But I told you that there is a property that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm running out of time, so I better get to it. And basically, this property is kind of a gem. It's down in the off of 192, and it's a condo. But the interesting thing about this condo association, they've got a lot of amenities. They've got a tennis slash pickleball court that's a combination of that. They've got a gazebo. They've got a pool. They've got They've got a gym. They've got all of that stuff. They've got a lot of great amenities that are going on in this condo complex, and it's not a really big complex. So, and their condo fees are hovering right around $300 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, right around 1,500 square feet for the unit. It's got a really nice lanai balcony that looks onto these amenities, not the pool. So it's quiet, but it's got it creates a nice view. It's an end unit, all of those kinds of things, and basically it's right around 268 for this particular property, and basically the bottom line is that you've got a lot of options in this property, which is another good thing for it too, because the zoning for it is that you can do short-term rental. It was built in 2004. This unit is impeccable condition, and the complex is too, because all of those amenities and everything. But there are about 4 or 5 other condo complexes around that area, and they do not have any of the amenities. So what they all do is that they all pay for the amenities of this complex. And so, so they pay about $100 a unit for all of the amenities that exist in this complex. So they've got all of their HOA fees pretty much paid for by other people. So I think that's a great thing to do. If you can get other people to pay for things, then that's a great deal. So they still have all of the amenities, but they're being paid for by somebody else, and it's keeping their condo fees down for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Right there, kind of down by, it's just a little bit past Margaritaville, basically is where it's at. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of things that are going on down there in regards to places that you can go and all of that kind of good stuff. A nice, safe neighborhood. They just repainted the outside of the buildings, and all of that kind of good stuff. But my point is that what you can do in that place is that it's zoned that you can do short-term rental. It's zoned that you can live there. It's zoned that you can have a second home, and it's zoned that you can live there yourself or have a long-term tenant. So basically anything that you would want to do in a property, you're not limited. And I think when you've got a property like that, that you've got options, that maybe today you want to rent it out as an Airbnb and have a second home, and then maybe tomorrow you want to live in it yourself full time, you're able to do that. In so many of the short-term rental communities that are coming up today, you can only short-term rental in them. You can only be in there a few weeks yourself out of the year because they've created the property taxes in a way that they're not paying for the schools. And so as a result of that, they put limits on it in the amount of time that anyone who owns it can live in there. So it's kind of a tough deal that you have to Airbnb it. Nobody can live there full time. So I think this particular condo unit has got a lot of pluses and minuses. There is one other on the market in there, and there has not been anything else on the market in there for a year because it's just such a stable, great community. And so I think that, if you're interested in it, then just let me know and we can obviously get you in it and go from there. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we will see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.